What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so we are getting into Punisher War Machine, and God, this is it's such a cool story. Like the cool thing about the Punisher is you never really know what direction his stories are gonna go in. One of the funny things too, the way I want you to check this out, it's actually like the Punisher's drawn to look like John Bernthal, which I don't have a problem with, dude. John Bernthal is like the best version of the Punisher ever, but still, like this picks up with like traditional Punisher fare, right? Like for those of you guys who've never really read Punisher comics before, but you know about Frank Castle's character, by and large, he just shows up and kills bad guys. And that's really it. Like there really isn't a whole lot of development to it outside of Punisher Max by Garth Ennis anyway. That was one of the coolest runs of his character. But here it's just like a couple of guys from like Chiaran, I think it is, from some basically a defunct state that's essentially undergone like a coup d'etat, who are basically like trading weapons. Like they're literally hunting for one of their guys who had just kind of gone missing. And then they're like, here's the weapons cache. When they open up the weapons, the guy's head is inside the case with a grenade attached to it. It blows up and then it's just absolute mass chaos. And it's just like Punisher going through and just spraying down everyone he sees. And that's one of the cool things about the Punisher. The Punisher takes no prisoners. This guy, when he shows up where the bad guys are, everyone's gonna die. But still, like when a couple of these guys basically jump aboard what's more or less a pontoon boat and then try to make their escape, we end up finding out that Frank Castle had essentially just like laced the boat and everything with like explosives and like blows up the actual the actual tanker itself and kills those guys along with it and just like sinks the whole thing. And so when he finally gets back to his van and he gets back to doing whatever he's gonna do, he's met by the arrival of Nick Fury. Now, Nick Fury actually takes him to a location, kind of a hideout more or less, but you end up having Nick Fury meeting with Frank and essentially saying like, I've got a mission for you. Now, by and large, Frank Castle avoids the feds. Like he's like, I don't wanna have anything to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. or what's basically a defunct S.H.I.E.L.D. because remember, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s basically been out the window ever since the events of Secret Empire, so it's not really there anymore. But he's like, I don't wanna have anything to do with like the federal government. I don't work for you guys. I did my time as a Marine. I'm on my own crusade now. Nick Fury's like, yeah, man, but it involves kids. And that's the line. When it comes to Frank Castle, when it comes to the Punisher, the line that he won't cross is kids. If anything ever happens when it deals with kids, oh, he'll lose his mind. That's why, like, if you go and you read the Slaver story arc from Punisher Max, one of the darkest and like most just a blood-drenched arc by Garth Ennis, like it deals with that, like the slave trade. And like he goes ham. It's amazing, like during that whole thing. But basically what we end up finding out here is there's a guy named Petrov who led like a coup d'etat in this defunct state, part of Russia. And the result is that he's settling as many scores as he can. So it's like the Godfather and the ends of the five families. The difference is actually, it's really not the Godfather and the five families. It's more like Kaiser Sose and like all those guys that took out his family, assuming that the story that Kevin Spacey gave us was to be believed. If you never saw The Usual Suspects, you are missing out. Oh my God, dude, I love Usual Suspects. You guys need to go see Usual Suspects. Like, you guys need to rent that or whatever, but it's amazeballs. Anyway, we end up also finding out that after S.H.I.E.L.D. had essentially gone under, that some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who were stationed there by Nick Fury had basically turncoated against S.H.I.E.L.D. or against the United States and like allied themselves with Petrov. And so the result is that Nick Fury's like, you're the man that I need here. You are a former Black Ops, agent. You were part of the U.S. Marines. You're trained in like every form of hand-to-hand combat within reason. I mean, he's not like Wolverine or anything. You've got all these different things that I need to basically send you in as a one-man army and take these guys out. The problem is they're basically using Stark tech. And it's one of these things where like this was technology that was originally developed presumably by Tony Stark and then basically given to S.H.I.E.L.D. so that they could have their own agents use their own suits. But the result is that these guys took their suits with them when they joined Petrov. And so in order to be able to fight fire with fire, Frank Castle needs a suit of his own. And so what he ends up doing is actually infiltrating a heavily armed and a heavily guarded U.S. Air Force base. And that's when he finds the War Machine suit that he was told about by Nick Fury. And of course, the idea is use this suit, take out Petrov, either force my guys to come back or bring my guys back, whatever the case is, and then like hand the suit back over. Of course, it's Frank Castle, which means that's not going to happen. And so following this, what he ends up doing is actually showing up in this country itself and just kind of like witnessing this old man who's being taken away because he refuses to give like crops and needs and so on and so forth to the guys who were there. And then Frank Castle just kind of takes him out. But notice how ruthless he is, right? It's one of these interesting situations because when you think of Frank Castle, by and large, it's just him with some guns. And so he really kind of has to rely on like surprise and brute force, right? Like take them out before they even know what's going on. There's no shadow games or anything like that. It's just attack. But when he's War Machine, when he's got all this armor on him, he's learning about the armor as he uses it, not to mention he looks absolutely beast with the Punisher insignia on it. But basically, it's one of these things. This is one of the important things about Punisher. Frank Castle's not just like a raw killing machine, right? I mean, he is, in the sense of like, he takes no prisoners and he asks no questions when it comes to taking out bad guys, but he's also a guy with a heart. So innocent people are usually always allowed to go free. It's like, get out of here before the killing starts. It's one of these things, he'll walk into a building, he's like, anybody who don't want to get murdered, get out. Like it's one of those things that kind of unfolds that way. But in this instance, it's collateral damage, because this old man basically says, hey, look, man, like these guys you took out, it's cool that you did, but like their friends are going to come calling. And when they do, they're going to want to know what happened to their friends. And so ultimately they're going to take me out and they're going to start killing people until they start getting answers. And so Frank Castle's like, okay, well, if they want to come here and if they want to dance with the devil, then the devil can dance with them. And so it's literally like they bury the bodies. He sets up a roadblock that keeps like their armed transports from getting any further. And so they have to proceed on foot. And when they do, Frank Castle eradicates them all. Now, that's the military experience and like the veteran experience of Frank Castle. Frank Castle is nothing if not methodical and tactical. And that's what makes him one of the most dangerous people in the Marvel Universe. Of course, a couple of these guys who were watching this absolute massacre unfold are kind of like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's go take refuge in the house. We'll be safe in there, only to realize the old man's in there with a scythe. And he just he starts hacking these guys to pieces. Now, of course, the byproduct of this is that the old man dies. I mean, you've got these guys with weapons, they've got firearms, so on and so forth. And so the old man dies, but he basically tells Frank, look, what you're doing here is the right thing to do. You got to take these guys out. You got to fix this stuff. And so what ends up happening here is Punisher kind of sits down and says, okay, look, this guy Petrov is exceedingly well hidden. This guy does not want to be caught. And so if he doesn't want to be caught, then I'll make him come out. I will stack the bodies so high that he'll have no choice but to come out here. But this is a dangerous game that Frank Castle's playing. If he goes through and he starts killing every single member of Petrov's army that he can find, then sure, like the mission will be carried out, but it could be that Petrov will be more dangerous when he's cornered than when he's not cornered. And so this kind of comes as a bit of like a prelude of sorts, in the sense that where Frank Castle's liberating all these different people from all these different prisons, he's suddenly met by the arrival of one of the SHIELD agents using their suit. Now, the suit this agent uses is well beyond Frank Castle's, but he doesn't have experience. He's flying around, he's taking him out and firing his weapons, but at the end of the day, he doesn't really know how to use every single facet of his abilities. And that's when Frank Castle literally just like gouges his eyes out, because he's like, look, I mean, you have all these abilities and all that kind of stuff, but you don't really know how to use them effectively. And so because of the fact that like Cates was the dude who was basically taken out, we end up finding out he was like the runt, right? Like he was like the small guy in the whole thing. And this proves itself in the sense that where Frank Castle is able to take like one or two of them out, all the others are able to band together pretty effectively and essentially like bombard him with missiles and send him crashing down into the water. And so it's kind of an interesting thing here, because while all this is happening, like Frank Castle's talking to the suit and the suit is talking to him. Now, where the suit just like tells him obvious things, or like it responds to his sarcasm by being sarcastic itself. These are cool little moments that really could be built on and become something awesome. And so of course this results in a couple of people fishing Frank Castle out of the water, and then Frank Castle, being who he is, makes his way to these guys who had taken him out, making their way back to their base of operations, and then Frank Castle ambushes them and essentially takes one of them away. Now again, this is stealth, guile, grabbing a knife and just sticking it to this guy's throat and basically saying, hey, look, I know you're going pee. If you want me to stab you in the one that winks and not the one that stinks, then you'll do what I tell you to. So like it's it's pretty interesting. Like it's pretty rough. But then like he basically goes through and this guy's like, hey, look, man, like I can fix your suit, but like we'll have to go to one of these bases, which is like heavily armed and guarded by like all these different guys from Petrov. Frank Castle makes quick work out of him. It happens so fast, we don't really even see a brunt of it. He's just going through and just like taking all these individual guys out. Now the problem with this is that in the middle of this whole thing, Nick Fury basically pops up and he's like, Frank Castle, what the heck are you doing? And reveals that this guy that Frank Castle has who's going to fix his suit can't do anything, that he's just like a new guy, so of course Frank Castle kills him, because why not? And of course this sets about another engineer inside the facility fixing his suit instead. But like at this point, it's literally him continuing to go on this warpath, and he tells Nick Fury, like, I want to know everything about Petrov. I want to know everyone he's ever known. I want to know his lieutenants. I want to know his right-hand men. I want to know all this stuff, because I am going to go through and I'm going to kill all these lieutenants, all these guys, and anyone they ever met. Like I'm going to wipe out every single member of Petrov's forces. They're all gonna die. That this guy's not gonna have any choice but to show up, to actually take action. And so this is when Nick Fury basically chimes in, after all this is done, this is when he chimes in and says, look, man, Petrov's got nukes, so you need to leave. You need to get out of there, because what you risk doing right now is that while this guy's basically he's the leader of a sovereign country recognized by the United States and the United Nations, you're committing committing an act of war. If people find out that you're acting on behalf of SHIELD and by proxy the federal government, then this is basically going to mean the United States sanctioned an effort to take out an existing and recognized world leader for its own purposes. It's an act of war. And of course, that would lead to a massive international incident, especially if this guy has nukes. Frank Castle's like, don't give a damn. So like Frank Castle takes off and is like he literally shows up to this huge meeting that Petrov has where he's talking to his guys and starts like killing them all right in front of Petrov. And the whole time he's like taunting him. And Petrov runs into his bunker and he's kind of hiding out. But the whole time he's taunting him. He's like, look, man, like you can come out here and face me, or like I can come in there and wipe you out. Either way, you're gonna die. And so again, it's kind of a funny thing because again, what makes Frank Castle so cool is like his small little tidbits of ingenuity. As an example, so these guys show back up again with their suits. And of course, Frank Castle was outclassed. And so it's not just about like brute force. It's not just about using a suit and just like running at them again and again and again and again. It's using small little tactics here and there. As an example, one of the things that he does is he grabs a plastic explosive and sticks it to the front of this guy's face and then slams his mask down and blows his head up. It's just small stuff like that. And like at that point, it's like he literally jumps in one of the tanks. One of the other guys goes to respawn, he gets yanked into the tank and he gets killed. The other three guys start blasting the tank. They basically destroy it, only to flip it over and realize Frank Castle burrowed down under the ground. And then he like literally starts grabbing them, pulling them down and just like tearing them to pieces, hitting them with a piece of a tank. Now the whole time, Frank Castle's suit is like beyond repair. It's breaking down. But like he's like, I don't care. Like these guys are supposed to die and I'm gonna take them out. And it's cool because that's a direct reflection of how Frank Castle normally is. If he believes he can win, he'll keep going until he does because his willpower is just that insane. And so in response to the fact that essentially like all but 2 of his soldiers have been taken out, Petrov ends up like launching the nuke. And it's the coolest thing because Frank Castle basically takes off, ends up like tracking down the nuke. And when he gets to it, he starts tearing through it piece by piece and then comes back with the warhead. And so it's literally him just there with a warhead. And he's just like, okay, so you guys like take off your suits or I'm gonna blow this warhead up. Do what I tell you to, or like I'm gonna use this repulsor and detonate this nuke. And so because of the fact that he would, because of the fact that like Nick Fury knows he would, and like everyone watching knows that Frank Castle's so crazy that he would do it, Nick Fury hits a panic button and deactivates his suit by activating an EMP. Of course, it also deactivates the suits of the people around him. But this is kind of funny because the guys are just like, oh man, dude, his suit doesn't work. And Frank's response is, and do you think that makes me less dangerous or more dangerous? And like, it makes them more dangerous because now they're all on an even footing. And these guys are just like, yeah, well, we're trained by SHIELD. And Frank Castle's like, yeah, but here's the problem, man. SHIELD is garbage. I crush SHIELD agents on the regular. Let me show you how. And like, just, it starts ripping these guys to pieces. And it's the coolest thing. It's one of the absolute coolest things to see. And so, of course, what ends up happening here is when Frank Castle essentially eradicates everybody, all that's left is Petrov. And under normal circumstances, we would expect Frank Castle to basically not stand a chance, that Frank Castle would be taken out. But again, ingenuity, quick thinking. Frank Castle basically jumps onto the suit, uses a dagger, and like punctures out one of the guys, like punctures out one of his eyes. And so it's like, damn. And then from there, like just starts hacking away at pieces of his suit. And the reason why is because Petrov made the statement, I'm using the exact same suit you wore, which cues Frank Castle off to the idea that he has all the same weaknesses as the suit that Frank Castle used. Now, this is really where the numbers kind of get fudged a bit. Where Matthew Rosenberg, the writer, kind of cooks the books a bit. Because if Frank Castle had used the suit for like a day, he really wouldn't know all the strengths and weaknesses, but he would know enough strengths and weaknesses to be able to incapacitate somebody else using the suit. So it also kind of works. So of course, when you have Petrov, who basically tries to take off, Frank Castle jumps on board and literally just starts like taking out things like the arc reactor, deactivating the suit. And so the whole thing just comes crashing back down to earth. And it's one of the funny moments. It's kind of like a way to end the story, kind of a caveat. But what Frank Castle does is he actually hot wires the repulsor hand of the suit that Petrov was using and uses the repulsor blast to push himself back up. Now, in reality, it probably would have sent him flying. Like it would just send him flying out in some direction somewhere, and who knows whether he would have lived or died. But it's the Punisher. It's Frank Castle. He's like Batman. He always lives because, he's Batman. Frank Castle basically survives the whole ordeal. The problem with this is that he's off the reservation now. And like, he can't be found unless he wants to be found, even if he's wearing a great big huge like War Machine suit. And so where Carol Danvers shows up and she's like, okay, what is going on here? Like what have you done? What have you screwed up? Nick Fury's like, Punisher's got the War Machine suit and I have no clue where he is and I have no clue what he's doing. And what we end up finding out here is Punisher is doing what Punisher does. He has a War Machine suit. He already toppled the dictator. So now it's time to go back to his roots. Punisher travels back to the city of New York to undergo his normal role as the Angel of Death for the criminals of the city, all while donning the War Machine armor. So it's awesome because what this does is it brings into sharp relief, and it begs the question, what happens when Tony Stark decides it's time to take the suit back? That's the question that we kind of have to ask here. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.